Yo,
What is up?
so it's uh it's 99 Luft balloons.
Wait here, I'll play for the chat for a second. Hold on.
¿Cómo que crockpot?
Can you hear it?
It's kind of yeah, I
Type.
I could, but it was kind of like coming in and out. Whatever, dude. Like it came in and then it faded.
It stays
So,
faded, brother. We stay faded. That's fun.
uh yeah, man. So anyway, the Luft balloons, what to say about it? Like I think it's weird, right? Like
Psyop. That's all I'm gonna say.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, let's just, I mean, the weird inconsistencies of some of these things. Like, supposedly this was like, we've seen some stuff where they've tried to say it's like these weather balloons or something like that flew down from the Arctic Circle. And then the way that there's like another one's appeared over Latin America. And like, I saw some stuff too where,
Like Latinos would have been shooting at this thing like a long time ago.
well, I mean, the thing's at like 60,000 feet or something, so.
Bro, the
But
cartel has 50 cows, dog. I mean, granted, it's a long shot, but
well, I mean, any of the stuff in Latin America came from our ATF anyway, so
yeah.
we got that too.
Speaking of something like that, that reminds me of something hilarious. So in Afghan, they have like those big balloons, and I can't remember what they're called, but it's like a big blimp, and they like put it up, and then they have a camera called the Castrol, if I remember. Either way, it takes like it rotates in 1 second, does a full 360, and it takes a picture of like a certain area, and so it takes a picture frame by frame by frame, second by second, and then you could also look at things within a certain area of operations. And it was so funny because uh where we were at was sometimes we'd get rocketed because they were trying to shoot this balloon down. And like these dudes would do like they would do like a whole Wile E. Coyote thing and set up like this really cheap ramp and shoot. Actually, funny enough, it was Chinese rockets. I think there were
But
105s or 102s, but they would land on the base. And sometimes they would try to like RPG this freaking like blimp thing. It was the funniest thing. I mean, it's funny now, but when you hear incoming, incoming, you're just like,
you
it's
know what's
not.
interesting
But
about that as you're describing that? So
what's
one of my
up?
boys, one of my boys, for years was designing something like that because he was actually
Mm-hmm.
one of the first team guys that was in there back when they invaded. And when he got out, he started making a company for that. I wonder if that was like one of his things because he created it. Because so like the whole thing was basically for dudes out in the field if they're operating on their own and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because like the drones that they had, it was really difficult for them to control the drone. Because the thing was, this would be something versus a drone, that takes off and kind of flies around and everything like
Yeah.
that. The point of this would be something that it would be tethered to you, but you'd be able to also control it as well, and so you'd be able to kind of change the direction of that. Dude, a hawk just flew through my backyard. You should have seen the bird scatter. Bro, I'm like sitting here like talking to you, and all of a sudden I saw the birds scatter, and I saw this hawk flying in low. It's
It's lunchtime, brother.
it is. It's crazy watching them feed. But nevertheless, so the thing was like he was designing it too so that you could do those things. Like you could
Yeah.
rotate it and also just maneuver it in different ways to get different views and stuff. But I'm sure, I mean, like he may have like initiated that. Who else knows who else came up with stuff like that? And then,
Yeah.
who stole his idea as well.
That's not
I
yours.
mean,
That's
that would never
ours.
happen in the military industrial complex.
Oh
I trust
no.
Raytheon. Raytheon's our
Raytheon,
friend.
Boeing. This
Yes, man.
podcast is brought to you by the military industrial complex.
Military industrial complex. We're here to get you killed so we can make more money.
Man. Right. What's that saying? War is old people talking, young men dying, right?
Or as heck.
Yeah. What is it? Yeah. Raw is war. Okay. WWE sponsor me. But
Yeah.
yeah, bro, it's crazy to kind of even think about stuff like that, like just the way that balloon kind of worked. And it was funny because it was kind of cool, but it was always used for the completely wrong reasons. Like I remember we were on patrol a couple times, and like, or like some of my boys would be coming back from patrol and they get in trouble for having their sleeves rolled up, like for being on patrol. Like that's what first sergeant was looking at whenever they'd be patrolling. Like instead of like looking at in the AO, make sure that there's no threats.
Dude, that's what's just so retarded, man. Like
It's like,
the people who can't see the big picture, they're
yeah.
just so caught up in like that one little area. Like, hey, if we're here, people must look like this. If we're here, people must look like this. Oh!
Bro, actually, funny enough, the wife and I were just talking about that, about how we're a slave to appearances. And that's what people get caught up on. It's like, oh, we gotta have that exact look. It's gotta be, you know. And the
Well, I
military
mean,
is so bad at that. Like I understand that it's like if you look good, people don't kind of like look at you different. Like there's a goodness, there's a weird nugget like of actual like truth. Because if you look presentable, you look okay. People leave you alone. They think you're kind of okay. But if you look bad, people are gonna start kind of judging and kind of looking like, that's kind of odd. But if you look presentable, like people leave you alone. And if when you don't, the military is so big to just like, if he looks bad, something else must be bad. But then
but I mean, dude,
they don't look at the bigger picture of maybe something's going on with this dude. Maybe he just came back from patrol. Maybe, his wife left him and took the kids.
well, dude, but think about like the bigger, like step back from that though too as well. Like think back to boot camp. Some
Yeah.
of the nasty people that were in boot camp, like
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
like I mean, when you go there, it's like, yeah, you guys are gross. Like
Yeah.
you
Some people
really
really,
like they legit like how many people did you have in boot camp too that got in trouble because they just weren't taking showers? Oh, I
yeah.
don't take showers. And it's like I get it. I get it if you're out in some cop out in the middle of like nowhere Afghanistan. Like you don't have access to water, and the water you have, you're just trying to drink or clean
Yeah.
something. Like that's one thing. However, you got like all kinds of, 21st century plumbing, not at like any of the bases, obviously, you show on your Instagram. That's a little different.
Yeah.
But man, like but these people like, you've got all dude.
I,
I
I,
don't know. I don't know if that's another hawk. Like I just saw another hawk flying by. It must be feeding day
bro, the
because I just
feds,
saw
they're onto you.
yeah, it's true because birds
Or
aren't
actually,
real.
no, birds aren't real. Oh, actually, I don't think pigeons are real, but either way. So a hawk,
Well, if pigeons
true.
aren't real, are doves real? Because doves and pigeons kind of close.
Well, no, the pigeon is like the rat of the bird, like like species. If you really think about it,
No, I mean it is.
the dirty bird, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
okay.
maybe the hawk is protecting you from like feds, i.e., pigeons, other birds.
Or maybe that's like the elite. Maybe the
Oh,
the hawk is the elite of the fake birds aren't real. You know what I mean? Like
the
that's
Rothschilds
they
sent
really
their
because dude, like since I've been on here with you, two hawks have flown by, and we know that naturally the Rothschilds are very concerned about any conversation that I have. And so they're just turning the birds
yeah.
on when we're talking so they can interfere. That's what it is.
Exactly. You know what I mean? It's us specifically during this time right now.
Only us. Yes.
Only
They saw that we were going to be chatting, and so they're going to interfere because
I have
we
duct tape, but I need to make a hat. So then that way it protects me from like the
well, you need
5G.
aluminum foil too. So
Yeah, of course.
let's go back. Let's
But
go back. Let's back up a little bit because as usual, we're
mhm,
schizophrenic.
yeah,
So when with the stupid like balloon
balloons.
stuff and
Yeah,
everything like that. I mean, it's just weird that
the
you
timing.
know because I was talking to my father about this earlier too.
Yeah,
I was saying whenever the media is focusing a lot of attention on something, I always question like,
they're
okay,
trying to
what's
distract
going
you.
on?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then especially, did you see like the that one star Pentagon admiral dude? His interview yesterday. I've just seen some clips from it, but there was one outtake
No.
of it I thought was really funny. He said something to the effect of, "Well," because like somebody was like, "Well, what if don't the people of the United States deserve to know where the balloon's at or something like that? And he was like, well, if they want to know where it's out, just go out into your backyard and look. And it was like, man, you guys really hate us, don't you? You know?
They do.
Well, and then they said too that it was Miley who said, don't shoot down the balloon over, or Millie or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Mark. It's good old boy Mark. Mark said, don't shoot down any of these things over sparsely. Ooh,
Populated area or what?
yeah,
Or
yeah, dude,
yeah.
the
That's the
hawk.
most American thing like I've ever heard. Don't shoot at the balloon. Like I can see like some dude out there like, I bet you I can throw a football over the mountains.
Did you see that meme I made?
Maybe.
I made one of Uncle Rico this morning.
Oh, I might have missed it.
Dude, that hawk just landed in a tree, like one of the highest points here.
Bro, they're watching you. I'm telling you.
Dude, yeah, dude, that's third hawk sighting. Third hawk sighting since
Man,
we've been talking here.
hey, that's confirmed. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sharing it now. I'll hit that. I'll hit that balloon with the football.
Pigskin.
With that pig skin, that hog skin. But yeah,
But I
no,
mean,
it's definitely the timing is odd. Like there has to be something else kind of going on, and even there are certain things that are giving people certain kind of conditions. That how's that song go? Shot through the heart, and you're to blame, darling. You give climate a bad change.
yeah,
Like a lot of stuff like that has been kind of coming out recently, so it's kind of odd that that certain company, it's stuff kind of coming out and admitting certain things that all of a sudden now everyone's like balloon.
yeah. I can't.
Maybe because
I
I've been
mean,
going down that rabbit hole recently of like even with some of the posts about the FDA being funded by big pharma, which is like 50%, and then a lot of this kind of stuff is coming out.
dude, I love like the fact check stuff on that too. Like, because somebody will be like, "Oh yeah, the FDA is funded by big pharma," and then the fact check will be like, "No, only 90% of the FDA is funded by big pharma. 10% isn't. So this is fact check false." And it's like, wait. Did you hear? But I mean, obviously, fact checking is just a distraction from reality.
How dare you not say the full truth? And it's like, what?
Yeah, you didn't say that it was not. You said it was 92.9%, but it was actually 92.8%. This is
How dare
false.
you? Completely erroneous.
I know,
Uh,
man. It's so crazy. You know something else I'd like to touch on
what?
here in the beginning? So on our last podcast, man, on the Telegram, there was
Mm,
a guy that I'm not quite sure because, like, just to be clear, this
mm,
isn't like
mm.
just when we talk about religion, stuff like that,
Oh,
we
okay.
touch on things, or if we're promoting like Christianity. A lot of what we're promoting with the Christianity is the Christianity that we follow.
Yeah.
In the last podcast, there were a lot of questions from people specifically that were directed towards you as to why orthodoxy.
Yeah.
And so we were taking a podcast when people asked about orthodoxy, and we were going to talk about orthodoxy. It's not like a smorgasbord of whatever religion you want to choose and stuff like that. And there's podcasts out there for stuff like that. And I mean, we don't mean any offense by this, but it's like that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
It's not and we talk about at times too. We've explored some of these other things,
Yeah.
you know, and like that's really not where our interest lay. And so when we focus on stuff and we start diving into things, it's from our obviously, I guess neophyte or whatever you want to say, like orthodox perspective. But hey, it's that's what we're going to talk about because at the end of the day, in our hearts, that's where we're at. And
Yeah.
you know,
And most of the stuff is also from like experience, and that's the other thing as well. It's like we're not negating other people's experiences, but it's like from our perspective and then from that historical and kind of looking at all of this. It's like that's the biggest thing that, at least for me personally and all that, and I guess for you as well, kind of seeing all that. And yeah, like looking at it from that orthodox lens. And I know sometimes maybe we might not be too, maybe not particular, but like in full detail of like certain things, because it's like even us, we're limited on the things that we know and understand that is part of that. So there's a lot of other channels and stuff like that that do go way more in depth. So if like y'all have questions and stuff, there's definitely probably better people to be able to kind of go through that. You know what I mean? Because like I have what, like over a bit over a year, like almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 in October actually. That it's been well, I've been down the road, like going out, like looking into orthodoxy for 2 years actually now, because it was about like the beginning of the year that I kind of started like looking into that when you suggested all that stuff. So yeah, I'm limited on resources. May not limited on resources, but on knowledge and on that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, and you know, like the reality of it is, I guess we've decided on orthodoxy. You know, like I think we're willing to question, and that's kind of part of the thing. Some of the different, like even outside of our regular schedule stuff. Like I know you and me as well. We participate in classes and stuff like that. But I mean,
yeah,
there's a certain thing too. Like when I first got into orthodoxy and stuff like that, there was that tradition, that historical nature of it that first attracted to me, and I got pulled into that. But then it became like something that was much more like, what's in my heart? What do I feel in my heart? Like you can't. That's much more intangible, and I think that's harder for people to grasp onto because
yeah.
it's like it's got to fit in this nice box of rational sort of like, hey, you know what? I follow this sort of thing, and that's what got me here. But what's keeping me here is the strength of the experience of just what it is.
Yeah, you come to like a form of like uh revelation, and God kind of reveals these things to you. And it was funny because that's something that happened to me yesterday morning as I was reading uh one of the readings for yesterday. And it was funny because like what is it, one of the prayers like at the end of vespers, you know what I mean, how like it kind of ends. I was like, where is that from? I was always kind of questioning of like why certain things end a certain way, and you know what I mean. And like how most people say, I mean, vespers and liturgy, like it's all a work and a service, and it's all biblical. And like I think that's the other hard part that people have, like I had a hard time understanding that. And then things kind of get revealed over time. And then as I was reading yesterday morning, uh it was the reading of Luke 2:25 to 38, which is the presentation of Christ, you know what I mean, in the temple with Simeon. And as Simeon, was promised by God, hey, like you're not gonna die until you see God. And then what he says is he looked up and blessed God and said, Lord, now you are letting your servant depart in peace according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared before the face of all the peoples, a light to bring revelation to the Gentiles and the glory to your people Israel. And like when I hear that in vespers or like in service, I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. I'm like, where's that from? And then now it's like it's there. You're just like like I was kind of
Yeah.
like it hits you and
Well,
you're just like, oh my gosh, dude. Like it everything, it's there. And when you have those like aha, like light bulb moments, you're just like, bruh. It's hard, like it's hard to look at it any different, you know what I mean? And just those experiences themselves like kind of just
well, no, it's oftentimes too. A lot of times reading the Psalms and stuff like that.
yeah,
There's so much that's taken from the Psalms that's a part of the liturgical cycle and everything. And you oftentimes you're just hearing these things, and then it all just kind of comes together. And you're like, whoa, okay,
yeah,
okay. And it's interesting too when you think back to how like so much of that stuff's just been layered over the centuries, and
yeah,
because it wasn't. There's been a lot of thought and effort put into what this is. It's kind of interesting too. Something interesting that had happened to me. So there was a guy at my church. Um,
yeah,
I just thought about this. It was an interesting thing that happened recently. So this is a guy that he had gone to some kind of a Protestant seminary and everything like that, but he'd never been, um, he wasn't a minister or anything like that. And that's weird. There seems to be a number of people that do stuff like that. They
Yeah.
go to a lot of these different Protestant seminaries and things like that, and they don't go on to something in that realm. However, ultimately, he started coming to the church that he'd
Yeah.
been attending for a while. He was actually, he was a catechumen, and then you
Hmm.
know, last year he and I got to talking a bit and everything like that, and he got baptized, and he was like really into it. And, like right after he got baptized, he was going to go become a monk. Like he was like hardcore, like straight up hardcore. But what was interesting along the way, every time I talked to him, he always wanted to. Um, so the term phronema.
Yeah, it's
What's the
the
Orthodox
mindset.
phronema?
Yeah.
Well, the thing was like I don't think that he ever escaped the Protestant phronema, and let me
Yeah.
explain. Because what he basically told me last weekend is he's leaving the Orthodox Church, and this is all in a very short time. Like it's so wacky, like what's happened. But along the way, he was, he would oftentimes like he would try to quote like the Masoretic text and
Yeah.
everything like that. And I would talk to him about stuff like that. And I'm like, I was like, Ptolemy sat down in like 250, 300 BC, somewhere. I don't know the exact dates. So I'm giving a 50-year range just because it's easier that way. And he sat down and he had 70 Hebrew scholars sit down and translate the Hebrew text at that time into Greek.
Yeah. The
And that's what
Septuagint.
a lot,
Yeah.
that's what the Septuagint Bible comes from. Now, the Masoretic text came about in like 800, 900 AD.
Yeah.
So you're talking over 1,000 years difference. And understand too, at the point, so if you look at the New Testament,
Yeah.
the what the people are quoting from and all those letters and everything like that, they're quoting from that Septuagint version, that Greek version of the Bible that had been translated by Ptolemy with the help of all those people some 300, 250, 300 years prior to, this, or, I guess actually 280 or to 300 and some years if you actually look at it when they were writing this. So
Yeah. So the
250 years.
Masoretic between the 7th and 10th century. Yep.
And so now there was a specific type of Judaism that existed at the time of Christ,
Yeah.
that's Second Temple Judaism. Now, that was eliminated when the Second Temple was destroyed. And then you've got basically rabbinical Judaism, which is a much different thing, which has
Hmm.
influences things like the Talmud, because the Torah would be that Old Testament or whatever. The Talmud, which is a very different approach to what existed there. And it's funny too, because I saw some stuff where like there's Ethiopian Jews that they still follow that Second Temple kind of stuff. So there's like these
Yeah.
conflicts that exist in Judaism, whatever. Nevertheless, so you've got the rabbinical Judaism that came about, and then those are the people who are responsible for the Masoretic text.
Yeah.
And there's things that existed in the Septuagint text that they don't like. Very prophetic things. Like they've eliminated specific things from the Old Testament, from Isaiah, from the Psalms, from various
Years.
places.
Yeah. All the messianic prophecies practically were all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They were all exchanged, people's years and ages and all that. Yeah.
yeah. And so my point being, this guy was trying to a lot of times argue from the perspective of the Masoretic text inside of Orthodoxy because he had this Protestant background. And because that's the thing that they talk about a lot of times is, and it takes a while. And I think that's kind of what, you tie that Frautima together with that feeling sort of the heart, because it's sort of something you develop,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think that's what helps you. as well to just develop more discernment, because you can just, you kind of hear things and like, yeah, it doesn't sound right. Not saying
Yeah.
I'm wrong, whatever, but it's just interesting. And I mean, it was just like, because, he had actually hit me up. Um, and he was starting to talk about like, all these things. I don't know. It was so weird. Ultimately, like trying to argue with me, something, like trying to use these theologians from that Protestant perspective. And I was like, look, man, I was like, here, it's this simple to me, man. If you're going to reject, the Theotokos, icons, things like that outright,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, your theology is off base. And
Yeah.
then anything that you kind of start building off of that moving forward is fractured, and the fracturing can become exponential. It's sort of like you stand on a piece of ice somewhere, you know what I mean? And you like
Yeah.
hammer on the ice and you watch it spread out. It'd be like that.
Yeah, and it's like most of us have like these preconceived notions of, Christianity just due to those our experiences with what we know and believed and understand, you know what I mean? Because it's like I had I was in that same boat like early on of just, hey, like even before I knew even about orthodoxy, hey, those, like Lord forgive me, but I was like those Mary worshippers, those Catholics, those weirdos over there, and all that. And I thought it was odd and I didn't understand. But then when you actually begin to even question, it's like, is it what I believe true? You know what I mean? And that's what a lot of the things that people are afraid are doing.
Well,
I was afraid of doing that. It was just like, am I right or am I wrong? And it's a lot of reflection and then kind of looking at certain things. And it's like, okay, one of the biggest things is just like, okay, what was the church doing 500 years ago? What were they doing 1,000 years ago? What were they doing 1,500 years ago? And all that kind of that continuity kind of helps. Then it's like, okay, God doesn't change. The church is never going to change. The church is a pillar of truth, just as you know Paul said. So it's like if things are true, they hold over time, and God doesn't change. So why would it change now? And,
I mean,
and that's the other thing too that's kind of hard to really take in because it's you have to submit saying that you're wrong, that I'm wrong as a person,
right.
thinking that what I think is right, but it's like all these things that were passed down through the church, through God, that's what's correct. And it's hard to really be like, hey, I'm wrong. I don't want to be
Well,
living in a
absolutely.
delusion. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's part of the nature of the culture of a lot of churches and things nowadays. It just seems to reinforce that ego, in so many ways.
culture, culture these days. I think not just the church, it's the culture
Oh
in
no, no, no.
general.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
absolutely.
But
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's the culture. The culture becomes part of the church because I mean, look actually at when you've got all the Skittles peoples in these churches. Like you look at that woke pastor. I mean, that stuff is just it's hilarious to watch, but it's also scary.
Yeah.
When they start talking about like they start using like pronouns and start like talking about like the apostles as they them or something, and man, and then they're just talking about, oh, and we're so welcoming of the queers to the, and it's like, wait, what? And that
I
that was
mean,
actually
yeah.
though, that was actually the thing though too, man, because I think I mentioned this before. You know, one of my one of my boys, he took his life,
Yeah.
and I was at the ceremony, at his church service. I'm at this church, bro, and the church walls um I'm seeing more, Skittles stuff all over the walls, and I'm seeing anything that's got to do with Christ. And that should be pretty obvious. You're not worshiping Christ any longer. You've
Yeah.
shifted into something to help reflect what you want, which is also kind of what's crazy this week. I don't know if I shared that with you. There's like all these people, there's a real strong push to push like towards like this AI Christ. And I saw this one thing where this guy was like spelling it like Christ, like Christ or something like that.
Yeah.
And Peter Thiel, who's like, hey, he's the based guy in Silicon Valley who, he threw money towards Trump. He's pushing some of that stuff as well. And it's just interesting to see how these people are trying to like grasp on to like these other things, and then they inject that into the church. And to me, when you look at that,
Poison in the
that's what
well.
makes me
Yeah.
start taking that back up. And it's like, okay, what happened here? Why are
Yeah.
things shifting so much?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a taking in of a society that just takes all these modern things and the modernization of like all this stuff, and it's like, hey, you know, we're part, yes, we're part of the world, but we should be different, you know what I mean? Because there's gonna be changes coming, and it's like, and if you, the more you take in and accept all these things, instead it's like, where's the focus, like you said, you know what I mean? And that's the hard part, because it's like, yeah, we're living in the world, but we're just passing through. And that's the hard part. We're so attached to all these things, and then people are scared to be Christians. That's the reality. And it reminded me of that interview by Father John Valadez, and I made a meme of it like a while back, where it was like, he's like, yeah, I was a Protestant for a long time, but he's like, I wanted a more radical Christianity, something that actually stood for what it meant, because I wasn't getting it here. And like, Orthodoxy has brought that, hey, get away from all these things, and you're forced to, well, you're not forced to do it, but it's like, you should be doing these things, the fasting, being off your phone, going outside, touching grass, you know what I mean, like praying, all that stuff forces you to, but in a good way, you know what I mean, not like force, but like it makes you kind of see all these things that they don't matter, only like God matters. And like, as you kind of doing it more, you see through it, and you're no longer like bothered by it. Like, yeah, it's sad that like it's happening, and that people are so lost and deluded that it comes to that point of like Christians, you know, accepting and bringing stuff like that into their church, aka church. So it's like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't help or be compassionate of people who are lost. We should definitely love them, yes. But just as, you know, God
But you
told
shouldn't
that
compromise.
woman, yeah, he's like, hey, go and sin no more.
Well, that's funny too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I
So
mean, you
that's
talk
the
about
biggest thing that people have
what
the
was that? That's
problem
like
with.
John 5, right?
Yeah.
Um, John 5. You know, when it's the however, I mean, it's often quoted, "He who is without sin may
Cast the
cast the
first.
first stone." You know, and so that's what people say. You know, like, oh, look at Jesus. Jesus is just saying, hey, you know,
No one's
just
perfect. Yeah.
right. And then, but that's the thing is, right after he says that, he turns to the woman and says, "Go and sin no more." He
Yeah.
he says that specifically. He's not condoning the behavior by any
No.
means.
And what's really funny is like, I went to like a homeschooling thing. Hello. This past weekend, and one of the kids had a question like that, which was honestly the, like, I could tell like the father that was like answering was kind of like, okay. And then it was a nice wholehearted question of like, hey, like, what do we do if like, you know, Skittles people come into the church? And the father was like, okay. He's like, well, he's like, we
Are
have
they
to love them.
repentant? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing. He's like, we have to love them. He's like, how different is it if like a drunk person comes in, or someone who uses drugs, or someone who's like addicted to you know, pornography, or you know, whatever sinful thing it might be. It's like, there's no difference. It's like, if that person is repenting and they want to change and they want to be better, we have to love them, but we have to also help them in that way. It's like, we're not condoning any type of behavior that's going to lead you to destruction. It's, we're trying to help and build you back up into that image of God, into that wellness. And I think that's where people are afraid to kind of like go down that route, because it's just like, you know, my sins aren't any worse than somebody else's, you know what I mean? I mean, granted, I know there's like another different levels of stuff, but regardless, it's like, you know, no one's perfect. We all have things to work on, but as long as someone actually wants to change, and it's like in the Psalm 50, you know, God wants a humble and contrite heart. That's what he wants as a sacrifice. Like us actually repenting deep down. It doesn't matter what it's from. If you really mean it and you're making those changes, that's what counts. It doesn't matter what it is you're struggling with. And that's
So
the,
I'm sorry.
no, you're good. Yeah, that's the main thing. And but our own pride usually kind of stops us. Like, I'm not wrong. I'm not the one who needs to change. The church needs to adapt to me. And it's like, no.
Well, and forgive me. I mean, I think the thing is here. Look, that's what it really comes down to. People are trying to change a church to reflect the difficulties that they have. They're so attached to the things that they're doing. Whether it, like you said, pornography, you know, drugs, gluttony. There could be there's a litany of things that people could be attached to, and
Social
they want
media.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And by deciding that, hey, I would rather the church just accept these things, and that's kind of the thing, like, oh, if we just make it more accepting, because that's kind of one of the things too. You get this bigger sort of push, like, if we just become more accepting, we'll get more people. And to me, that's the thing that goes back to like Gideon's army. Like Gideon had a lot of men that were going to fight for him, and what was it like? Oh man, I am not a good Old Testament scholar, but I remember there was the one thing where he first led them into water, and the Lord told him, like, have your men drink of the water, and it was the men that actually, as they were drinking, looked up as they were drinking, like surveyed the surroundings. So those were the men too as well. And ultimately,
Yeah.
it came down to like, what was it like? Because it was like 20 some
300 or
thousand.
something like that.
Yeah, it was like 20 some thousand men, and it came down to 300, which is interesting. 300.
So it's in Judges 7.
Well, and I think in like the Septuagint, it's like one kings because there's like four
Yeah.
kings,
Yeah.
so
But yeah, he was very particular about like the way they were drinking the water. Yeah.
well, because it was
Because for like it's funny too, because it's like, all right, tell them whoever's shook, go home. Oh my, whoever's afraid and worried, tell them to go. Tell them to leave. He's like, so 22,000 people at 22,000 people left and 10,000 remained. And then he's like, yep, too many.
yep.
Can you imagine? Like, and people always say it's like, oh no, man, God will just take everyone. Yeah, he will, but he's very particular. He's very particular. And it's like, it's not like a broad stroke of just, hey, do what you want, bro. Like, just, it's all cool, it's all gravy. It's like, no, he's been very particular. That's the scary part. Because then people, I had this preconceived notion of, hey, bro, once you're safe, you're always safe, dude. We're good. You can do whatever you want, man. Like God is cool. But no, it's like he's very particular about every little thing for a reason.
Well, I mean, right. I mean, that's not. I mean, and that's the thing too. God is merciful. That's one of the reasons too why
Yeah.
often you'll hear from, and not that it's exclusively. I mean, but we say it a lot in our services. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, for real. Because it's like you come to realize it's like, oh, bro, man, like I should not be here. And then
Oh,
it's like,
dude.
but then you're like,
Yeah,
I should not be here. But then you're like, I should not be here. Thank you. Like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
A
uh,
contrite heart.
yeah, it's pretty crazy to kind of think about. But even just to kind of even tie in all the military kind of stuff, and even like the whole, I know I've kind of touched on with like tradition. All these things are very particular, right? So like how, and I probably made this point at some given time. I don't know. People in the military like to follow rules and all these stuff and all these traditions. Why? Because it works, because it keeps you safe, because over time these things have worked, right? I think most people can agree to that statement. So the church does the same thing. God has done the same thing. He said these traditions, these very precise kind of things to keep us safe and keep us okay. The minute we go outside of that, things get crazy. You know what I mean? Look at the military nowadays. Same thing. Oh, back in my day, we did this. And it's like, okay, yeah. And things do work. And some things should change, but not everything. Change for the sake of change is bad. You know what I mean? Change for progress or to get more definitive into what is already there. Okay. But to change just to change is what honestly leads to all this craziness. The
And I was thinking about that.
modernization.
And I was thinking about that too, as well, man, with the just the radical changes to things. And I mean, that's really just been, there's a lot of, I think, just wackiness of society that people were driven by like a revolutionary spirit.
Yeah.
But where's that revolutionary spirit rooted? And what is the revolutionary spirit ultimately lead to? Like, what are we trying? Because it's not just changing for the, just for changing. It's just like, let's let's just rip it open and let's
Yeah.
see what we can create. Because then what's good about that? Because back to the whole thing with some of the things that we're seeing with some of the churches.
Yeah, it's easy answer, Satan. You know what I mean?
No,
But like,
really.
yeah, yeah. Because it's like all he does is take something that's true, turn it just enough to where it's not true, but it's close enough. And you know, there we are. That's
Well, dude,
the scary part, bro. Because it's like I used to think like a lot in a different way. Like, nah, man, I never questioned things. Well, I questioned like the government and most things like that, but like with church, there was like an odd there's not like an odd trust, but there was a trust just because it's like, okay, it's God's things. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
that's still like now it's just like, bro, man, I was so wrong. You know? But it's like now it's just looking at all these things, the concepts, the thoughts. What
that
do I
that
actually believe? What do I believe? And
that
yeah,
that that
it's
that
tough.
boomer approach. That boomer approach. Yeah, man. We were
Yeah,
told it was good in school, so it must be good. It's all
it's
good.
it's all good, bro. Trust the weather balloons. You know what I mean? They're coming to check on you.
Or trust the hawks flying around the backyard.
Yeah.
He
And funny
stopped
enough,
flying around. They must have gotten the information they needed.
yeah, they did. They planted it. They planted the egg already, you know. And actually, funny enough, going back to the balloon, it's just like, how do we have quote unquote the most technologically advanced materials in this country? You know, we have like all these weather towers, we have all these like airplanes and stuff kind of flying, and airports and all the stuff that, and radar and sonar and all these things that should be detecting all this stuff. And ironically enough, no one caught it. No one caught it, right? Allegedly, right? So it just
Well, but
like
think about.
Pizza Hut can track my pizza and tell me where it's at, but the government can't even tell me like where the balloon came from, allegedly.
See, that's always one of the interesting things. I think of a couple of military examples to that. Number one, in when we were bombing Serbia and they were using some of the stealth planes and everything like that, they
Yeah,
were actually with like an old, I think it was a Czech radar or Czechoslovak, whatever, but that they were actually, because it was such an old version of it, and it was something that like when they designed the plane, they never
yeah,
like tested for that because they're only thinking up here. And so they were actually able to track with that. But then I think also as well to over in Ukraine now,
yeah,
the the Russians got those like what do you call it? Like they were their little drones that they had that they got from the Iranians.
yeah.
Those and they have like a little what do you call it? Like a lawnmower motor on them or something like that. Like they're
Yeah.
really slow flying, and they're like almost undetectable by so many of the systems. You just hear it. And those are the ones too where
Oh,
they
that's
show like
right. I remember. Yeah, 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 yeah. Because there was like memes floating around of like, yeah, like a lawnmower, like kind of fly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Man, that was a while. That was not too long ago.
but they're still using them.
Yeah,
And something that it was too as well was like the Iranians. They had to adapt in their own way. Like, how can we create something that will allow us, to because with it's basically American, but the Israelis when they're operating in Syria, places like
mm,
that, and then especially too because of like different regulations, controls. And it's like that's one of those situations too, because I talked to some of my boys about this as well at times. It's like there's not a hatred for like the Taliban as long as it's like not the Taliban, like they're not desecrating America. So like these are guys just being warriors and they're trying to defend their land and things like that.
yeah,
Like these were guys that were just legit like warriors going against warriors. And you got to have a certain level of respect because when you don't have that respect, you start to think that you're better and that you're going to be able to do things better and
yeah.
things like that. And that's how you get caught up and that's how you get taken out.
That's how you also fall into this like false dialectic of things, and that's the other thing that people don't understand. Is just like that actually strikes a perfect chord because it's like, yeah, it's like we and I know this is gonna be hard for some people to like hear, and it's like even like the Taliban, right? Like the CIA trained them. They trained like them in the 80s to fight, the Russians. We gave them all this stuff. We trained them. Bin Laden was trained by the CIA. And people are gonna say, "Oh, conspiracy." It's like, bro, it's literally there. It's all there. And we ended up fighting them. But realistically, right? If someone comes into your house are you not going to defend your house? Right? Regardless of whatever the situation is. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the odd situation that we were involved in like Afghan, where it's just like, yeah, there was ties, but it's like, I don't want to go too heavy into the AKA conspiracies about what happened
Well,
on,
if I could,
but yeah, it's like there were warriors, people who were defending their home from an invading force, technically, which we were. And granted, we like to think of ourselves as like this grandiose savior, police of the world. You know what I mean? America, team police. So,
well, the thing is too, it's that
yo, what up, homie? Yeah.
the one piece that I would just say is that there were members of like the Taliban, some of the groups, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't work directly with the Americans. They'd only work with like the ISI, the Pakistanis. But it was our money and our funding that was going to the ISI because ISI was more radicalized. They'd been radicalized because of battling with India for years.
Yeah.
And so that was a great in. But I mean, they would even hire people like with the Pakistani ISI, the intelligence service. The point is, though, our money still got there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We weren't necessarily with everybody like on the battlefield, but our money was going in and we were supplying everything to make it happen. That's the reality of it. And
Yeah.
like, reality's crazy, just like the reality of sometimes you'll hear crazy stories from people about the people that we and our special forces were training people in Jordan, like people that you wouldn't really think are our allies, but yet somehow there's training being provided by our special operations community for these people. I wonder why.
Yeah. It always seems to kind of work. What's that meme? It's like the American boss, like you train people to fight terrorists who later become terrorists, so you train others to fight, and then it's just like it just continues on. It's just like we train someone to fight a bad guy who later becomes a bad guy, and then we train another guy, and then we do, and it's just a repeating cycle of that. But it's like
Well, that's what I really do wonder
yeah.
about, like the purpose of some of the stuff going on in Ukraine now. Man, because
Oh, for sure.
well, it allow me, if you would, just to unpack some of my thoughts as it relates to this.
Yeah.
So, for years, obviously, until late February last year, everybody was openly admitting that these were Nazis over there in Ukraine, various levels of Nazis, but they were Nazis. And
Let
these
me
were people.
interject for 1 second. You know what's really funny, and what else can prove that? Well, besides the fact that they were there, remember Forward Observations Group when they first went out there when Ukraine happened? Everyone was like hating them because they got a ride from a Nazi to go out to the front lines, and everyone's like, "Oh, Forward Observation Groups is like hanging out with Nazis, bro, like in Ukraine," and everyone was like hating on them. And then now all of a sudden, but yeah, go.
Well, and the thing was, you had the government and everything like that along the way. Like they would try to say, "Oh, we're not going to put funding towards this." They can't go to these groups or whatever. Like Right Sector, Azov, all these different groups like that. But it was still getting there. At the same time, like they're doing this to do that. But I think part of the goal there for that is they really want that radicalized white element so that what they can do ultimately, like let's just say, for example, let's say Ukraine wins, and then all of a sudden those people, the Nazis, are going to appear. Well, that's a war to be fought as well. Like, oh, we got to take these radical elements out. We didn't realize that these were the kind of people we were giving money to. I mean, oh, how did that happen? But then, but
Yeah.
then that has a whole other level too, with that, oh, the white evil men of the United States, the whiteness. The whiteness. We've got to take out the whiteness. Like
My fellow
the black.
whites, we need to stop these evil.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
And
yeah,
because it's not just white people, because you know very well, like all shades of brown that happen to like do something a certain way. Well,
yeah.
dude, look at Memphis. Those five gang members that got on the police force down there in Memphis, and they beat the hell out of that guy,
Yeah.
beat him to death, and they said that is actually demonstrating white supremacy.
I've been called one. It's like, bro, like I'm Latino, bro. Like I barely got a green card, dog. And like people are like, yeah, bro, you're German now. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm into art and like the Autobahn, but whatever. And like I had
Well,
some
but,
dude also calling me like a liberal at some point. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, do you know how crazy that sounds? Like, I don't even
but think about
support
it.
that kind of ideology, but it's going back to that dialectic of left, right, and it's like there's a third option. You know what I mean? But
Well,
people are
dude, I
caught
mean,
up in that, and it was off of a post of the Camp Pendleton. They were doing like a BLM cutting cake, and it's the CEO, some white dude, and then also some Asian guy that's cutting the cake. So it's pretty funny that it's like, and everyone was kind of like, I mean, it was funny, but because it's like the black dude's in the back, and they couldn't even get a black dude to cut the cake. Yeah, but he's like,
well, I
you
mean,
should be
it's
talking
always the way
about
people
it.
try, just like those people that bombed the Capitol in the United States. That one woman that was pardoned by Clinton, that is
Yeah,
now like one of the major people. She like literally like bombed the Capitol. They talk about, oh, January 6th, worst attack on our soil,
yeah,
worse than 9/11, more, like all these crazy things that they repeat. Uh, but now she like runs BLM behind the scenes, like this
yeah.
woman that legit bombed that. But
What?
you look at too, man. So we finance these groups over there. We radicalize all these countries, just like in Syria, like all the money we threw behind the Syrians out there, the whatever groups they are, because it was Al Qaeda in Syria, and then it became like some Al Sham or something because it sounded better. Because like us giving money directly to Al Qaeda, suddenly some people in the United States were like, "Wait, why are we giving money to Al Qaeda again? Oh no, they're fighting this guy over here in Syria that's protecting Christians."
It's yeah, the funding of not what do they say? Like peaceful. God, it's always something like completely ironic, but yeah, the Syrian rebels. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Who later turned into ISIS.
well, but the thing is though, like we inject these money in these areas over there, but then we get people from the United States that go over and become radicalized. They come back to the United States, so then it's going to be a nonstop search for anyone that might be that. Because it was like
Yeah, yeah,
just the white people and things like that they were that have traveled to these countries, but then that gives an excuse to give, I guess, basically give our crappy intelligence agencies somebody to look after.
yeah,
Like so the FBI can go knock down doors on mosques or churches,
yeah,
as it will soon be.
yeah. Oh, the name of that
Especially
lady is Susan Lisa Rosenberg. But yeah, she was pardoned by Clinton. That's right. But yeah, like all these
Rosenberg.
things.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting. Uh, but yeah, like all these people go out to the spots. They bring these things. They bring all this stuff back, and then they fund these groups, so they allow these groups to kind of like do these things. So then it's like the FBI, the CIA, like most of the stuff that's happened even within the last 10 years or whatever, right? They knew of all these people
Hmm?
and all this stuff, and it's just like their job is supposedly to prevent, quote unquote, like all this stuff, but hey, this person of interest, we were tracking on them. Then why didn't y'all do anything? Well, we weren't sure if they were gonna do something. It's like you had been warned by several people that just like that these people were, crazy, but whatever, you know what I mean? And just that's
But dude,
perfect example of that because it's like if they let these things happen, then they can have that excuse of, hey, well, that's what we track. That's what we do all this stuff. That's what we're spying on you constantly. So we prevent certain things, but it's like they only prevent when if it's a certain narrative, you know what I mean? But then when it's other ones, it's just like, oh, okay, we're gonna let this one go. So then afterwards people will be scared. And it's
but
the Hegelian dialect, you know what I mean? Of like let create a problem, afterwards offer the solution. So it's a lot of that. They understand the problem, they see the problems, and then when they let it happen, people are like, oh, somebody needs to do something, and then they come up with this even crazier idea of just, hey, you have to give us more control, looking into your phones, tapping all your information just in case, and people are like, anything for the name of safety, you know. But it's that
so
old if you what is it, that Jefferson quote, if you give up security for freedom, you deserve neither, but yeah.
so so we've talked about the military and industrial complex, but what about the healthcare industrial complex, which is tied into the whole food systems because
Oh
you
yeah.
feed people like really bad food with all these bad additives to it, which make people sick, but then make them necessarily part of a whole system that they have to keep coming back for because, it's like they've legit come out, for example, like with the transgender stuff, and they talk about like each transgender member just to like do the transition stuff like that. That's like 250 to like $500,000 a person out of pocket that they're going to pay.
Yeah,
That's
that's
going to
mad
be
money.
something that goes back to the system. So just think about that with like multiple levels because we know about all these type of things too. Like how many dudes go to the VA or whether it's just Medicare, whatever the system, where they go in there, they get a medication. The medication that they take has a side effect. Well, guess what? They've got a medication for that. And then they've got a medication for that. And then they've got a
Yeah.
medication for that. And it's an unending cycle. But the point is there, you're a return customer. And
Yep.
that's really the insidious nature of it is how do we create those repeat customers?
It's a business, and it's like
Yeah.
it's that's the hard part for people to come to understand. Is just like maybe at some point, medicine did have like an altruism of wanting to help, to do the good. You know what I mean? And even if you
Before
look at the
the
his,
Rockefellers,
yeah,
Rockefellers.
what? No way, bro. They love their anthropological, beliefs of wanting to help their fellow man by taking over all of it. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with like why it's a business these days. Of course not, bro. They love us. But yeah, it's just that. It's like even if you look at the history of all this stuff and medicine in general, it's at some point it was about helping your fellow man, and now it's all that. It's like you said, it's a business. You have 10-minute appointments, and like they fit in as many patients as possible. It's hi, what brings you in? Okay, cool. Let me get your vitals. Let me get a quick thing. Doctor will be in here. Bye, and that's it. And like it's like, where's the relationship between the patient and provider of like caring for people? Hi, what's going on? How can we help you? It's no longer that. It's hey, what are you here for? Okay, drive through medicine. Adios. Like, bye. Get out of here.
Well,
And
dude,
it's hard because it's like I love helping people, and it's like it's something I'm very passionate about. But it's hard to work within a system that, at least in that aspect, that's absolute just garbage. And I'm trying to look into, I'm transitioning, into more of that holistic medicine type deal, because it's like I feel like they haven't lost that root and that vein of like being in touch with humanity still, because it's there are things that still work. I'm not saying that you should throw like essential oils on everything, but there are other things that you can still do
bro,
holistically and naturally that work.
I use crystals. I don't do those oils. I use crystals, man,
Put
and I
these
and I
power
manifest.
crystals in your
I
hands.
manifest.
You got to manifest the energy of the crystals, and you hold them, and then you put them in your butt. I have to send you that meme either way. But yeah, it's the manifesting of the will and witchcraft. But no, it's more of just practicing natural things that you can still do: your diet, exercise, the preventative
Well, that's the
things,
thing, though,
drinking
too.
water,
Like,
and living actually from the land and actual healthy food. Yeah.
think about how many people, and I see this all the time, and I've heard things along the way. It's like how many people think that I can just eat whatever I want to eat because they'll just make a medicine that's going to fix whatever problems come along. That approach, like I don't have to put any effort into it. And that's it's kind of funny too, as I say that. I think that there's a parallel too, man, to like some of the stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
oh, but just that's the way I think some people approach religion because I mean, religion is yes, and Orthodoxy is a cure and it's a treatment for everything. But at the end of the day, there's there's not shortcuts if you do things right.
Yeah, no, of course. It's like you have to look at things in that way. It's like if you look at it a realistic way and you look at things like that, then yeah, there are things you do have to change.
Well, right on, man. Well, I know you had some other stuff that you've got going on today and everything. So I don't want to keep you that because I kind of did this last minute. We didn't do a lot of
I
hardcore.
saw Gucci.
But I know, man. But no, I appreciate it. I just figured I'm trying to get back into the zone of doing this stuff more and everything.
Yeah, no, I know, same, and like definitely a better schedule for that way people can keep a track, and then people can kind of ask questions as well, and then maybe we'll do another like Telegram one, definitely for sure.
For sure, man. Well, right on, man. So anyway, this is. Do you have any last? Do you have any last minute things you want to say?
Uh, Pre-list. Sometimes we're all in spiritual delusion, and sometimes it takes a bit to look deep inside yourself to kind of change, and just kind of keep that in mind. That if you're wrong about something, be honest with yourself.
Right on, bro. All right, man. Well, thanks, guys, for checking us out. This is R1O with my doc, and we are PBF, and we are